Hello, everybody. Welcome to this little talk on content validity and also a new concept, Q validity. It's about these two things I will talk, and I will argue that content validity can be seen as a Trojan horse. I wrote an article about this together with Peter Verboon and Jacques van Langveld. You see here their names. And yeah, let's dive straight into it. Take, for instance, here, sex addiction, or as I call it, problematic hypersexuality. Two cases are explained here. In red, there's Mr. Strong. He is really can be seen as problematic hypersexual. He has repetitive sexual impulses from an early age on, extramarital affairs. It really hurts his life to be doing this, and he can't stop. And in blue we have Bert, who is 63, who has over 2,000 lifetime sex partners, but he has no problem whatsoever with this. So how can we distinguish these two with a good questionnaire on sex addiction? I will show you an example of an item that is currently used in the most new questionnaire for this purpose. When I could have sex, everything else became irrelevant. So think about it. Does it go for Mr. Strong, who's having problems? Yes, but does it also go for Bert, who's not having any problems? Probably also. When he could have sex, everything else would become irrelevant. So here we have this question, but is it actually unique to sex addiction? I would say it isn't. And the consequences of that, that it isn't a unique question, that it's not a unique indicator, means that there are a lot of people who score high on this question, but don't show any signs of sex addiction at all. And this is often the case. And we will dive into the definitions of content validity to see why this is the case. Content validity is determined by the degree to which the questions, tasks, or items on a test are representative of the universe. So that's big. Of the universe of behavior the test was designed to sample. So sex makes everything else irrelevant. Yeah, that's representative of sex addiction, is it not? And here we have another quote from a textbook, I must say, from a textbook on validity. Content coverage is attained by experts that rate the degree to which the items cover the specified domain. So again, coverage. Well, coverage is attained by the previous questionnaire item about that everything else became irrelevant if one could have sex. So in that case, this item is indeed content valid. But does it work? I would say it doesn't work to distinguish Bert from Mr. Strong. And in general, we see that to cover the full content, or so the thinking goes, items should be as comprehensive as possible. They should cover the whole concept. But we counter that proposition with Q validity. And what is Q validity? Q validity is a property of questionnaire items that express the uniqueness of these items with regard to the object of measurement. So the fact that everything else became irrelevant when one could have sex is not unique to sex addiction. And that's why it is content valid, but it's not Q valid. And well, let's take a look at some other questions. Doing something sexual helps me cope with stress. Is it representative of clinical sex addiction? Yeah, it might be, because all, or maybe most people who suffer from sex addiction, for them, sex is a way to cope with stress. But is it unique to sex addiction? I'd say mm, that for everybody who has had sex in his life knows that sex helps you to cope with stress. So it's probably not that unique to sex addiction. It's content valid, but it's not cue valid. So we go back a slide to this beautiful apple that represents the concept of cue validity. If we look at the indicators, we see that the questions or indicators that we just saw might be representative by indicator 2, 3, or 4. They do cover a part of the content of sex addiction, but they also cover um, somebody who's very interested in sex but doesn't have any problems with that whatsoever. So what you look for is indicator 1, which is really an indicator that's totally cue valid. Let's continue. Doing something sexual helps me cope with stress. You often find yourself preoccupied with sexual thoughts. This is really a questionnaire item to measure sex addiction. But yeah, again, is it representative of clinical sex addiction? Yes, because people who are afflicted by sex addiction, they often find themselves preoccupied with sexual thoughts. So there, we're good that far. It is content valid, but is it unique to a clinical sex addiction? No, it's of course not unique. We did some research, empirical research, in which we collected 58 items and investigated if they could discriminate between birds on the one hand, having no problems whatsoever with intense sexuality, hypersexuality, you might say. And on the other hand, Mr. Strong, who has problematic hypersexuality, who is really afflicted by this, who has negative mental and emotional outcomes and suffers from it. And how can we best distinguish between these two groups? By using the most Q-valid items. And in the next slide, we will show you some results of these 58 items that we tested. So here we see them back. Sex helps deal with stress. Sex made the rest irrelevant, preoccupied with sex. And we see that they don't show any higher means in the non-problematic compared to the problematic hypersexual group. So they don't work. These items don't function as they should. They don't distinguish problematic and non-problematic hypersexuality, but they should, because that's the purpose of that questionnaire. The items that we showed are content valid. They do cover the subject of sex addiction, but they are not Q valid. And therefore, yeah, they are not really, how to put it nicely, you might prefer other items. We did find some other items that did distinguish between, in this case, non-problematic and problematic hypersexuality. So some items that did show some Q validity. So, for instance, the item failing to change your sexual patterns. We see a much lower mean for non-problematic than for problematic hypersexuality, or feeling negative changes by sex, or feeling controlled by sex. So here we all see that there are significant differences between item averages. So these items you could consider Q valid. And you might wonder, well, this is a lot of talk about sex addiction, but does this go for other subjects as well? I mean, if it's only for sex addiction, it doesn't regard me. Well, if you look at social sciences in general, for instance, I've seen questionnaire measuring kink with a question that asked about, do you love casual sex? Yeah, well, does that have anything to, is it Q valid for kink? It might cover the concept of kink, that most kinky people are do love casual sex, but there are a lot of people who are not into kink who also love casual sex. Or, for instance, measuring sexual health with a question that expresses the connection between spirituality and sexuality, which, yeah, might be sexual healthy, but it's not really. I mean, the fact that you believe in God is not really Q valid for sexual health. And more seriously, measuring depression. So if you look at the back depression inventory based on the DSM 5, you see, for instance, the item measuring, yeah, the do you sleep well? If you don't sleep well, you score higher on the depression scale. But actually, insomnia is much more frequent without depression than it is with depression. So also in that case, you are creating false positive information. I thank you for your attention. And yeah, the take-home message is content validity is much too broad. We need to zoom in and take a look at the unique cues to arrive at Q validity, to come up with the best questionnaires that we can make. Thank you for your attention.